I feel like every year NBA free agency creeps up on us. It's a couple days after the NBA draft, and literally players can start agreeing to deals at like 6 o'clock at night. And we're approaching that period this year, so I want to take a look at last year's biggest free agency signings and see how well they have aged and give a letter grade for them. So if you guys do enjoy these videos, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. And like always, if you agree or disagree with any of these selections, please let me know in the comments, and let's get into this. So we're going to start off with Cam Johnson re-signing with the Brooklyn Nets on a 4-year, $108 million extension. Johnson was coming off half a season playing for the Brooklyn Nets when he was included in the Kevin Durant trade. He went on average 16.5 points on good efficiency in that half season after the deal. Then he got this deal from the Brooklyn Nets in free agency. It was $25.5 million this past season, then $23.5 million, $21.5 million, and then $23.5 million again in 2027. Johnson would go on average 13.5 points for the Brooklyn Nets this season. He shot 44.5% from the field, 39% from three, and 78% from the line, as the Nets were one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference, missing out on the play-in tournament with a relatively competing roster. And I'm going to give this letter grade a B-. I mean, $23.5 million relatively isn't too much nowadays for someone that's an elite three-point shooter, but that's pretty much all Cam Johnson really is, and he hasn't really lived up to the contract so far in just 1 year after getting extended by Brooklyn. Next up, we're going to talk about Kyrie Irving, a former Brooklyn Net who re-signed with the Dallas Mavericks on a 3-year deal worth $126 million and has a player option on the final season. So relatively, this could have been a 2-year deal. Just this year, which Kyrie has helped lead the Dallas Mavericks to the NBA Finals as the number 2. He's under contract fully next year, then a player option. So there's a chance he re-signs with them this offseason once again, but this contract has definitely been an A+ for Dallas. I mean, they bought low at the perfect time for Kyrie Irving, who did have some question marks around him on the floor and off the floor during his time in Boston and in Brooklyn, but Dallas really didn't give up too much for him. I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and a first-round pick down the line for someone that averaged 25.5 points this season, and like I said, is the number 2 on the Dallas Mavericks, a team that is playing in the NBA Finals. So this is an A+ re-signing. Next up, we got Fred VanVleet of the Houston Rockets, where he kind of got a shocking deal last summer. 3 years, $130 million, which was $40.8 million this past season. Then it's $42.5 million next year, but there is a team option during the 2026 season, which will most likely not get picked up. So relatively $80 million over 2 years for Fred VanVleet. He put up 17.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 8 assists last year for the Houston Rockets. Shot 38% from 3, 41% from the field. Honestly, a solid Fred VanVleet season, giving you above average defense and was facilitating for their younger guys. I don't expect him to score 17+ points per game this year. I feel like he's going to be more of a facilitator as well. So I'm going to give this a B+. I like the terms for this deal. I mean, having a team option on the 3rd year is great. Someone that is changing that environment in Houston after they were a disaster post-Harden trade. Just when you're getting paid top 5 point guard in the league money, it's kind of hard to justify an A contract for somebody like Fred VanVleet, but I think a B+ is a fair grade. Draymond Green was a free agent last year, and he got a 4-year, $100 million extension by the Golden State Warriors, but it is ascending. So in 2027, he's going to be making $27 million as a 38-year-old. And right now, I'm giving this contract extension a B. They kind of had to re-sign Draymond, so I'm not going to fault them for that. And Draymond, when he was on the floor this year, was still one of the better defenders in the league, but unfortunately, he wasn't on the floor a ton due to suspensions this year. He was kind of all over the place. I do worry about how his offensive game is going to age as well. Obviously, he's not much of a scorer, more of a facilitator and complementary piece, but that just may be kind of expensive in 2027 if he's not this elite defender he is today. So I'm going to give it a B, but also take into account the off-the-court issues as well. Next up, we got Jerami Grant of the Portland Trailblazers. I'm giving this a C. Jerami Grant got an eye-popping 5-year, $160 million extension by Portland last offseason, and they gave him that contract when they found out that Damian Lillard wanted to request a trade. So I really didn't see the reasoning for bringing back Jerami Grant, someone that was 29 years old. You're giving $160 million to for him to be your highest paid player post Damian Lillard. I mean, Grant had a fine statistical season, 21 points, 3.5 rebounds, shot 45% from the field and 40% from 3. But in my opinion, he can't do that as a number 1 or number 2 or maybe even a number 3 scoring option on a really good team. He hasn't made it to the playoffs since the bubble when he was the number 4 scoring option on that Nuggets team when they lost to the Lakers in the conference finals. And I think if they were able to get maybe a first-round pick or 2, if they do move Jerami Grant this offseason, I would bump this grade up because then you got some draft picks in return. But for now, if we think he's going to play out this contract on the Trailblazers, I'm going to give it a C. I do think he's overpaid. Next up, we got the Chicago Bulls extending Nikola Vucevic. They gave him a 3-year, $60 million extension last June. And for Chicago and what they were trying to build as a team right now, I'm going to give this a D. Vucevic averaged 18 points, 10.5 rebounds last year and shot 48% from the field and 29% from 3. But he's also not a good defender defender whatsoever, not a good rim protector, and Chicago basically signed themselves up for NBA purgatory with this extension, and maybe they are able to move him, but I don't think that they're going to get equal value that what they could have got if they maybe did a sign and trade with him last summer, because you're just getting an above average offensive center in Vucevic, but a well below average defensive center, and I don't really know the market for that right now. So next up, we got Kuzma, who re-signed with the Washington Wizards on a 4-year, $102 million extension. I'm actually going to give this an A, because unlike Jerami Grant, this contract is very tradable. It's actually descending over time, where he made $25 million this past season, then he makes $23 million, $21 million, and then $19 million, and teams that want a floor spacing power forward could get Kuzma for almost half the price of Jerami Grant. And Washington definitely could have lost Kuzma for nothing. He was a main piece they got in the Russell Westbrook trade with the Lakers, so job well done by Washington. They can keep him around throughout their rebuild, or they could look to move him for a first-round pick or two. Now, I definitely questioned this signing at the time, and Bulls fans, I just dunked on you for the Vucevic signing, but I'm going to give them an A+ for the Coby White signing last summer. It was a 3-year, $33 million extension for a player that ended up finishing runner-up in most improved player voting this year. Coby averaged 19 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5 assists, shot 45% from the field, 38% from 3, 84% from the line, stepped up in the absence of Zach LaVine throughout the year, and really broke out to be a foundational building block for this Bulls team going forward. He's still just 24 years old. Yeah, it's an A+. We're going to talk about Jordan Clarkson and him re-signing with the Utah Jazz next. It was a 3-year, $55 million extension, which honestly isn't too much money for a small market team like Utah, and someone that has been a good Jazz for a couple seasons after getting traded to them back in 2020. But I'm going to give this a C+. Clarkson did not have a good year last season. I don't know if there's really a market for him right now to trade him. He's kind of also blocking some of the progression for guys that have gone through there, like Ochai Agbaji last year. I'm hoping it's not guys like Bryce Sensabaugh or Keontae George, and I don't think it will be, but I'm just not a fan of the Jordan Clarkson, maybe Karis LeVert archetypes, where you're going to get scoring for sure, but when they are not on, they're either going to shoot you out of games, not going to play good defense, and maybe at times have subpar playmaking. So I'm going to give this a C+. I may be kind of harsh here. The Lakers re-signed D'Angelo Russell on a 2-year, $37 million extension last year, and I'm going to give this an A-. Honestly, D'Lo was underpaid this past season compared to the rest of the guys making similar amounts to him. He put up 18 points, 6.5 assists, 3 rebounds a night, shot 46% from the field, 42% from 3, and 83% from the line in 2024. And for $17 million, yeah, that's a bargain, but it has a player option on the second year. So D'Angelo Russell is most likely going to be a free agent once again here in 2024. And he didn't play well in the playoffs, but for $17 million, it was a really good contract for just 1 year. The New York Knicks used their mid-level exception last year on former Villanova guard and Warriors wing, DiVincenzo. It's an A+ here. They used the full mid-level on him. He's making $10.9 million this year, $11.5 million next year, $12 million in 2026, and $12.5 million in 2027. He's playing well below that. Based off his season last year, he should be making north of $20 million a year for what DiVincenzo does with his outside shot, his good hustle and rebounding for a guard. He could pass as well. He could defend. He's quick. This was a phenomenal signing by the Knicks, and he's on such a bargain for the next 3 years. Giving it an A+. We'll go back to the Lakers here, where they re-signed Austin Reaves on a 4-year, $56 million extension. He was a restricted free agent, and Reaves, being an undrafted free agent when he entered the league, really limited the amount he could have made in free agency. And I was honestly just surprised the Lakers really didn't have to bid with any higher offers out there. Like a team like the Spurs could have given him more money. But around $13.5 million a year for the next 3 years for someone that averaged 16 points, 5.5 assists, 4 rebounds a night on good efficiency, yeah, that is a great deal. And I know he didn't really break out to be like a third star that Lakers fans would have hoped, but he's still a really good player on a great contract going forward. The last year does have a player option though, so it's not going to be 3 more full years, most likely 2. I'm giving it an A. The Houston Rockets spent a lot of money last year. They went out and got Fred VanVleet. We talked about him before. They also paid a lot of money to Dillon Brooks, gave him a 4-year, $80 million contract that descends over time. I'm going to give this an A. Dillon Brooks was the perfect wing for Houston this year under Ime Udoka. Brooks is a very good defender on the perimeter, in the post, can guard other teams' #1 scoring option, and he was an above average shooter as well. The knock on Brooks, he was too inconsistent at times from 3 in Memphis. He shot 36% from 3. He was well above his career free throw percentage as well by 4 percentage points in 2024. And I think it's going to be a great complementary piece for Houston over the duration of that contract, and it's also a perfect amount if they wanted to leverage it in a trade later on. Sacramento re-signed Harrison Barnes to a 3-year, $55 $54 million contract extension last year, and the Kings had notable cap space. I'm going to give this a B-. I'm not the biggest fan of Harrison Barnes as a player. You know, he does a lot of things well, but I don't think he's really going to elevate you, and I thought the Kings were going to use their cap space somewhere else. He's still a good player. That's why I'm giving this a B-. He was a good three-point shooter this year, but I feel like he's never really elevated his playmaking at all, someone that could actually set up his teammates. He's not really going to crash the glass and be an outstanding rebounder, which is very valuable in a playoff series. And yeah, that contract could be leveraged for a bigger deal later on, but he's already 32 years old. I don't really see the appeal in trading for Harrison Barnes, so he's kind of stuck there in Sacramento, giving it a B-. The Milwaukee Bucks had to bring back Brook Lopez, so I'm giving this contract extension a B. 2 years, $48 million, which is a little bit much for somebody like Brook Lopez, who's now 36 years old, but like I said, the Bucks didn't have any other option. They had to bring him back, and he wasn't terrible this past season. Put up 12 points, 5 rebounds, shot 37% from 3, 49% from the field, and is still one of the better shot blockers in the league. But yeah, you pretty much know what you're getting out of Brook Lopez. Giving it a B. I think it's a good grade. The Milwaukee Bucks also had to re-sign Chris Middleton as well. They could not afford to lose him because they were going to have a very hard time replacing him, so they gave him a 3 years, $102 million extension. I'm going to give it a B+. I mean, if you look at the numbers from the regular season, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 49% from the field, 38% from 3, you'd say making $31 million a year is kind of an overpay for that production. But Middleton is still a fine number 3 option for this team that actually played well in round number 1 in the absence of Giannis and Dame. So shout out to the 2012 draft class, man. Still getting big contracts almost a decade after they were drafted into the league. Guys like Harrison Barnes, Draymond Green, Chris Middleton. Toronto gave up a future first-round pick to acquire Jakob Poeltl back at the trade deadline last year. That ended up being the 8th overall pick in this year's draft that San Antonio was going to get. And Jakob Poeltl was a free agent last year, so Toronto had to bring him back given what they gave up for him. And they signed him to a 4-year, $80 million extension. I'm going to give this a C+. I'm just not the biggest fan of Jakob Poeltl as my leading center. I don't know how he's going to impact a playoff series at all, so I do feel like there's a ceiling on what he could be for you as your starting center. He's a fine offensive player. He's never going to create his own shot. Doesn't have the greatest post game in the world. Someone that's really just going to score inside. Is a solid defender, though. I don't think he's elite by any means. He's no Miles Turner or even Brook Lopez. But for $19.5 million, it's not the craziest amount. It just sucks they had to give up the 8th overall pick to get him and then extend him. Cleveland used their full mid-level exception on Max Strus last year, and I'm going to give that signing a B+. They desperately needed someone that could create their own shot and come off the dribble, off the bench for them. And I think with the injuries that they had this year, and really not the steps that they would have liked Isaac Okoro or even Evan Mobley to take offensively, Strus was asked to step up. And he shot the ball well throughout the regular season, but maybe not up to Strus's standards. Shot 35% from 3, 80% from the line. And he didn't play all that well in the playoffs, was inefficient at times as well. I'm still going to give it a B+ because I do think it's a good value contract for Strus going forward. Herb Jones was a second-round pick back in the 2021 draft, and he was going to be making nothing this year. But New Orleans did a great thing. They did what like OKC did with Lou Dort. They made sure he wasn't going to be making that rookie money this year and extended him to a 4-year, $54 million extension. And for someone that was one of the better defenders in the league this year, was an all-defensive first-team wing, and is only going to get better on that end of the floor and improved his outside shot, this is an easy A+. The Pacers shocked everybody when they gave Bruce Brown a massive annual value of $22.5 million when they signed Bruce Brown to a 2-year, $45 million deal, with the second year being a team option. But Indiana, being a small market, had cap space to use, and Bruce Brown was one of the better role players in 2023 and helped lead the Denver Nuggets to being an NBA champion. And off his production last year, like, this probably would have been a B-, but the fact that they leveraged Bruce Brown's contract to include and get to the salary matching to get Pascal Siakam back in January is going to earn this an A-, because Siakam helped lead them to the conference finals. That's why you do these deals. I really don't know how to grade the Grant Williams signing here for the Dallas Mavericks. They had to give up some assets to go out and clear the cap space to get Grant Williams, and he was not good for Dallas. They traded him at the deadline to get PJ Washington, who's helped lead them as a great stretch forward to the NBA Finals. So for the Grant Williams signing, like, it probably would have been just a C, but the fact that they were able to flip him and a first-round pick to get PJ Washington, I'm going to give it a B+. So yeah, that's going to be me grading the biggest free agency signings from the 2023 offseason. Let me know what you guys think of these down below. Do you agree with my grades? Do you disagree with them? We're going to have another collab mock draft coming out on Tuesday, so make sure you're subscribed. And drop a like if you do enjoy. I would appreciate it, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Peace.